Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to this month's instalment of the SACRE committee. I'm Councillor Webb. I'm chairing this committee. As you can see from the room, you've got everybody's names in front of them, so hopefully that should help. We have had apologies from Joseph Everdell. We've had apologies from Councillor Rowley and possibly Karen Vincent, who might be joining us remotely. Remotely, we have Andy Todd. Whilst he's not in the room, he is part of the meeting. Andy, can you hear us?
I can, and I can see everyone.
Excellent, and we can hear you. That's gone well. The next item on the agenda is, has anyone got any declarations of interest at all? Lovely. Following that, we have minutes and matters arising. Now, we've got two sets of minutes to go through because at the last meeting we were not quorate. Pleased to announce that we are quorate today, so that's well done for people turning up. That's a good sign. So I'm going to go through the first minutes from January. You'll see in those minutes that, you'll see in the subsequent minutes that we made comments about that first set. Does anyone have any questions or concerns to add to those? No? Okay, well, I will sign those at the appropriate time. And then I'll move on to our minutes from the March meeting. Obviously, you'll see within that March meeting, after every item, there was an indication that we'd have to come back to this and ratify it when we were quorate. So I'm going to assume that that's okay with everybody, but if anyone's got any questions about the accuracy first of that March set of minutes.
I just raised that my name started correctly on page 9 and page 11, please.
Diane's name spelt wrong. How are we? Is it not enough ends?
It's N-O-R-T-O-N. It's spelled correctly on the first page, but
so N-O-R-T-O-N. Excellent. We'll make notes of that. Any other? Yes.
Yeah, just underline some issues well, please.
Under item 61, where it says that I was going to attend the conference.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all right. I knew I couldn't go because I was away then, but I wasn't sure whether it was a typo or whether I'd volunteered.
We'd agreed that you'd go in absence.
Yeah.
No, so we will change that. So it wasn't Sue, it was Diane. Okay, that's good. Councillor Knight, can you use your microphone?
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. It was just that on item 60, I was due to provide a brief back on the SACRE newsletters.
Yes, so
that's not quite ready, but that was all I was going to
excellent.
say there.
Okay, so that was my first question on those minutes, was the SACRE leaflets, but can we say we'll come back to that at the next meeting?
Yes, it'll be. I've done some research, but I've yet to talk to the people who volunteered to work on that with me, and we'll get a draft for approval for the next meeting, if that's okay.
Sounds like a good plan to me. Can we put that on the agenda? Ben?
So I see that there was an issue around the Jerusalem Trust wanting to be told about grants, and that was held over because we weren't quorate. So do we need to return to that?
Yeah, so that was also on my list of things, and if you don't mind, I'll come back to that one at the end. Because I've got something else that I want to add to that now. Anybody else got anything in particular about the minutes? Okay, just a few things that I had. So Diane, you were going to visit the Maintain Schools group. Did you do that?
Sorry. I read somewhere that we were saving that until this time, decision until this time, or to be discussed or resolved this time.
Yeah, so in terms of, because we weren't quorate at the last meeting, we couldn't officially say, Diane, go and do it. But I was just wondering if you had managed to, or if you've got any plans to do.
I need to talk to somebody about the details about that.
Okay, can we just maybe work with Maxine outside of this
Yeah.
meeting and see that? That's brilliant, thank you. Next one on mine was Penny. We talked about the interface. SACRE would receive a plan by Penny in a future meeting on potential activities for SACRE to take part in with schools during Interfaith Week. Yeah, that's why I'm raising it now.
See it. I haven't got a plan for you, but I'm
Penny, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, I did note that, but I was going to say that we are actually working on Interfaith Week at the moment. It's in a very loose draft format, but we do have some things in place already for Interfaith Week. One of the things that we're going to hold is a kind of an informal breakfast, very brief. We actually start Interfaith Week in York on the 9th. So even though it officially runs from the 10th on the Sunday, we'll start here on the 9th of November. And on the 9th of November, our sort of opening activity is that we're going to have an informal kind of breakfast chat meeting just for an hour, 9 till 10 on that Saturday, to which anyone is welcome. So it'll be an open forum for faiths and anyone who might be interested. So it might be something that might be an opportunity here. We decided that we wouldn't have it very long. It won't be like a cooked breakfast or anything. It'll just be, sort of, croissants and juice and that kind of format, but a brief opportunity to make connections and have some chats. And then we have our trees, our interfaith trees, that we will go and take care of them. So down on Clifton Ings. So we'll start that activity at 10:30. So anyone can just come to the breakfast and then come on, or just come to the breakfast. Some people are not able to stay and come and do that service with us. So that's how we're starting Interfaith Week this year.
Sounds a lovely way to start it, to be honest, Penny. I think, we've said here, and we sort of said in that last meeting that, we want to support what Interfaith are doing however we can. So even when you do, have a structured plan, we'd be happy to sort of receive it here, even if you just sent it on to us as and when, and we can share it amongst committee and see if there's anything
that'd be great. Yeah, so, that'd be really good. But it's also the 35th anniversary of York Interfaith this year. So it's only 2 years behind IFN, which sadly was closed by the government. So that's a different story. But
and a different government.
A different government, yes. But there is some hope actually that there might be something else that we can do. But so yes, we're celebrating 35 years of continuous interfaith work in York, which is something I think to recognise. So hopefully we usually have a closing service of some kind that we haven't put the details around. So maybe that's something that, we can have you along to and you can be a part of as well. And we can celebrate that work together.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on. One of the other things that we talked about in the last meeting was the Kirklees quality mark. And I note that there's an item on the agenda about that. So we'll come to that at the appropriate point. And then back to what Ben was saying about the Jerusalem Trust. The reason I wanted to hold that one off and get everything else out of the way was I've certainly, and I think Maxine, you've had them as well. We've had a couple of requests for us to send stuff out to schools from different groups. Jerusalem Trust was one. We've had one from a group that was talking about God and the Big Bang. And these are organisations where they might be perfectly fine. They might be wonderful. I don't know is the honest answer. And actually, I just think that we've talked about this several times now about having some sort of catalogue, some sort of list where we can actually say, right, these are things that are happening. And I almost want to get us to the point where we go out to organisations and say, we're going to be putting the catalogue together for this year. Tell us now if you've got something coming up in the next 12 months, 24 months, something like that. Rather than us getting ad hoc suggestions come through, and then how do we actually vet these suggestions, whether they're real? Should we vet them? How do we send them out? How is it a fair system if it's just someone happens to know that Maxine's the person or I'm the person to contact? So I'm just sort of opening that as something to think about. Dan, you got any immediate thoughts now?
Yeah, and I think TACO probably as well. One of the sessions that we went to with the NASACRE conference was about RE hubs. And not to preempt what you're going to talk about with the Kite Mark, but actually we don't need to do that because it's all on the RE hubs, and we just need to tap into what's there. There's a massive list of visits and visitors. There's a whole sort of quality control, quality assurance system, if you like, as part of RE hubs. And really, why reinvent the wheel? It's there. It's there already. Excuse me. And God and the Big Bang, I've seen them in action a couple of times, and yeah, they're fine. It's really good stuff. I've seen them in secondary schools and I've seen them in primary schools, and what they do is really getting the children to think about creation versus the Big Bang. So it's all good philosophy, and it's good stuff.
It's that fact, theory, and fiction. Ben, you poised the microphone. So I'm going to let you in.
Sorry. I think that sounds like a sensible way forward. I hope we'll turn down the request from the Jerusalem Trust. It's very explicitly that, unless this is minuted wrong, says that they offer small grants to schools for the purpose of promoting Christianity. That is absolutely outside our remit and therefore not something we should do.
I think that's that's exactly why when someone gets in contact with me, that's often the way it happens. I don't have that knowledge or background to decide what goes where. I think what Diane's raised. Taco, did you have anything to add to that? No. I think that seems like a sensible way forward. And then it means that when we do get those sorts of emails, we can just respond and say, we refer all of our schools in York to this website, to this organisation. If you want to promote what you want to promote, then make sure you get yourself on that website. Does that seem reasonable? Yeah.
I think it would be worth showing members of the SACRE the website so you can see what it offers, because there's also a calendar there that we can add things to, should we want to do. It's just a forum where we can add all the things that we need as SACRE. There's got a SACRE element to it as well, but it'd be nice to sort of show everybody around it. That'd be really useful.
Yeah, what I'd suggest is we do add a link to the SACRE web page, so that there's a link through to the RE hubs. And yeah, we could at a future meeting just go through it so that everybody's familiar with how that works.
Okay, so there's two things there. There's one, are members happy based on Diane and Taco's experience to upload that link to our website straight away? And the second point would be, if members are not, would they prefer it to be the other way around, in that we had a good look at it and then made a decision at the next meeting? Personally, I'm happy to just upload it as a link. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay, can we put that down as an action? Maxine, are you all right to action that one? Thank you. Sorry, Taco?
I was just thinking of off the top of my head, I think Olivia, of course, was heavily involved with SACRE in previous years, is involved with RE hubs. So it's almost like a quality stamp from us, really knowing that she's involved and she's making sure that thing is running smoothly. So that's, I think that all of us can agree that she's quite thorough.
Okay, I think we'll agree. If we agree then that we'll put that on as a link on our web page. I do think it would be good if Maxine, you could share the link around members, and then if members take a look themselves, and if they've got any questions or comments, feedback by email in between the meeting. Does that sound sensible? Councillor Woodson.
I was just going to add that if Diane or Taco are particularly aware of useful bits, if Maxine circulates it and you can signpost us to things that you know from your experience particularly useful, that would help make it a slightly quicker job.
Easier.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Lovely. Okay, I'm quite glad that we had that conversation about the Jerusalem Trust, really, because I think that was quite a useful way of doing things. Right. Anyone got anything else on the minutes of the previous couple of meetings? Then I shall sign those as well at the appropriate time. Okay, so next item on our agenda is the monitoring of standards. Maxine, you dealing with this?
Yes, thanks, Chair. The main report that's been written on the monitoring of standards in RE recently has been the Ofsted subject report. And again, I would recommend to SACRE members to familiarise yourself with that report. It's called Deep and Meaningful ? The Religious Education subject report. It's 10 years on from the previous RE subject report. I think if nothing else, if you just make yourself familiar with the main findings, but also one of the things to focus in on, particularly as we started those visits to schools, one of the things that the report is saying that there's good quality RE happening across a range of schools. It doesn't matter the type or the size of the school, but there are certain things that make good quality RE more likely to be happening. So one is the strength of teacher subject knowledge. And the report does talk about some of the problems that there are with teacher subject knowledge at the moment, and supporting that access to professional development, which for many teachers is quite difficult to get at the moment. Regular time in the curriculum for RE lessons. And again, that's interpreted in different ways by different schools. But it's clear that where that regular time is in the curriculum, it does really make a difference. And the final factor is a well-organised curriculum containing knowledge chosen by leaders to enable pupils to deepen their understanding term by term. So that curriculum that builds knowledge and understanding and progression. There's a lot in this, I think, in this report as we're starting that process of reviewing our agreed syllabus. Because one of the things that really exercises Ofsted is the fact that there is no national syllabus for RE. You know, it's the one bit of that's outside of the national curriculum, even though it's a compulsory subject. And they have long challenged the idea of local areas having different RE curriculum. Largely because it's difficult for them then to establish national standards around RE, and it does create an unlevel playing field in terms of the way that RE is taught, delivered, and the way that children and young people's understanding is developed. So one of the things that they've asked policymakers to consider is whether that's revisited, and the place of RE within the curriculum is one of the things that Ofsted do feel they need to highlight again. They also felt as well that there's a great variety in young people's understanding of the key elements of the subject. Sometimes the way in which the subject's delivered sometimes means that that progression in the understanding of different faiths is not always there. And there's an overemphasis sometimes on the peripheral bits of religion, if you like. So the religious buildings, the signs and symbols, rather than getting under what's distinctive about the belief and the way in which that impacts on young people's understanding of religion in terms of personal development in particular, and the role it plays in developing everybody's understanding of big issues like tolerance and those broader values. So I think there's still a worry from Ofsted that depending on the skills of the teacher or the way in which it's being delivered by the school, that sometimes young people's experience of RE can be quite superficial. And that's actually meaning that they're not able to really make good progress in RE. So some really, I think it's quite a challenging read. And it's well worth, as I say, us as SACRE in York reflecting on which of this could be key messages about the work of SACRE in the future, and those things that will help to have a better quality experience for children in York schools, or even to allow us to say that it doesn't look quite like this here, and we've got some really good examples of the way in which York schools are delivering a rich experience. So I think holding this up as almost as a bit of a mirror and say, does it look like this in York at the moment? Are there things that we can take away that SACRE would be able to champion around developing the quality of RE in York schools? They do talk sometimes as well about where the curriculum delivery means that there are long gaps between RE sessions that can impact on how much pupils are able to retain and then to actually deepen their understanding. One thing that stuck with me as well, and I think we have sort of had this in terms of teachers themselves through our annual survey, talking about how they teach non-religious worldview. One of their findings is that there was a profound misconception among some leaders and teachers that teaching from a neutral stance equates to teaching a non-religious worldview, and that this is simply not the case. So, you know, that you do need some professional development about what is a non-religious worldview, rather than just adopting this neutral stance. And we have had that, to be honest, from teachers in York saying that they do need some help in that area. And it also says, although a few teachers had received subject-based professional development in RE, the overwhelming majority had not. Given the complexity of the subject and the kind of misconceptions that pupils were left with, this is a significant concern. So they were the two things that really leapt out in terms of the work that SACREs can do in supporting and access to better subject knowledge. So I think some quite significant things in this report. I don't know whether Taco and Diane want to add anything, because I'm sure you've looked at it as well.
This came up in one of the sessions at the NASACRE conference, and the adjective that was used of the report was that it's a sobering read. They talk about lack of depth in the RE curriculum, an overemphasis on exam prep too early in Key Stage 3, and the lack of subject knowledge across the board, really, not just primary but secondary as well. Yeah.
If I may interject, sorry, I've got no idea how to raise my hand on Zoom. The local primary network meeting that we had just a couple of weeks ago, as part of the meeting structure, I shared the curriculum that we have planned at Ralph Butterfield, and a number of the professionals there wanted to discuss more intercurriculum structure, and it's been made part of the agenda for the next meeting. A lot of what that was based on was the stuff that was from the stuff that was provided when the syllabus was originally launched, and it may be that it might be useful for some sort of either pack that people can be provided with if they're struggling, which kind of summarizes a lot of that information going forward, you know, for the next syllabus, or more opportunity for those meetings. I'm not sure, as I wasn't there at the time, but that seems to be a theme of what people want to discuss.
That's really helpful, Andy, and I am conscious because we keep being contacted by teachers who are new to RE at the moment, or roles have changed, and they're asking for copies of the locally agreed syllabus. So, you know, there is some work to do, I think, and as I say, for me, starting to look at some of these messages from this report as we begin that process of looking at the agreed syllabus is a good way forward for SACRE.
Thank you. I just wanted to continue with what we were saying before. A lot of the things that we're talking about in NASACRE was the fact that there are bits and bobs of kind of training available. And for example, I wrote down here that Edge Hill University actually do a summer school for teachers that's starting in the subject, and they can actually go and have like a little bit of a sort of, is it a week or something, learning in the subject, learning about the different religions and faith and stuff like this. So that's one of the things that they do, because Colin, same Gabs, I think that's another one, they provide lots of again, websites and things that we can put onto there. And then one of the other things was, which of course the Ofsted report was published about a month after our final meeting. It was quite soon after we had, but again at NASACRE they talked about the national content standard as well, which is almost as close as we probably get to a national curriculum for the subject. And that was a very, very interesting read, to kind of like putting those two things together and actually looking at what we have as our agreed syllabus. The things that they recommended here a year before the Ofsted report was they link up very much and sort of say, this is what we need to avoid, this is what you should do. And looking at our agreed syllabus and what that content standard says, we are quite in line with what we should be doing and what the schools should be providing out there. So that was quite nice to sort of match those things up. And hopefully we would find, if we went around schools in York, that was something we would kind of have. But I think, yeah, one of the main things that they really talked about in NASACRE was that the struggle for teachers, the struggle for RE teachers, the funding for RE teachers, and therefore, you know, having to bring people in who aren't trained RE teachers and making sure that they have that kind of CPD available to them. So there are lots and lots of things out there, and I think especially through NASACRE, again, like through RE hubs, there's ways and means to kind of deliver those things to people that need them.
Thank you. Okay, so I think moving forward, in terms of what I'd like to see out of this is I wonder if we can circulate the deeper meaningful report, and then if we can circulate the national content document as well, just so everyone can take a look at that, with the mind for thinking, what do we want to see out of our syllabus when we start to have a review of that in the future. And that then leads us into a process where we can say, okay, someone starts teaching this course halfway through our cycle. Is there a sort of a pack, a sort of a support pack for a way into the syllabus almost, so that that might be quite helpful. Does that seem reasonable? Just so everyone's up to pace, and then potentially if anyone's got any questions, we can start to feed those back, potentially through myself, because I know we've got various people in the room who've got more expertise on this. I can collate any questions and then bring them back to the meeting. Does that sound reasonable? Ben?
I went and spoke last week at Rydale School, and I have to say, having, you know, I do loads of these, they were the most impressive bunch of kids. I spoke to year 8 and year 10. The level of knowledge was really interesting. They had and I asked them about their curriculum, which was cross-theme, and so I wonder if it's possible to get a look at some of the Academy's own syllabus as well, and just compare with what others are doing as well. And I'd be particularly interested to see their that trust syllabus, because the result was impressive.
Which trust was it?
Rydale School. So I don't know which the trust is.
Some trust. Okay, but then we'll have a look.
I mean, I'm sure it's on the website.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a fair point, Ben. And I think, you know, if we do see anything, we want to pick the best, don't we? We want to see what we can do with that. And I think that links into as well our conversations that we had with young people previously. And I know there's something about what we do with that going forward. In fact, that's one thing I missed from the minutes of the previous one was whether we had young people attending our SACRE meeting. Now, my view is that maybe we do what we did where we invited young people maybe once a year. And again, that feeds into all our thoughts about curriculum moving forward. So that was going to be my suggestion regarding that. And then that also feeds into the sort of school visits that we've been doing as well, which we'll come to later on. Okay, anything more on monitoring of standards, which was a much more interesting conversation than I thought it was going to be from the title. No. We'll move on to the next item then, which I'm sure will be just as interesting. A review of the SACRE development plan. So, Maxine.
I don't think there's too much more to add from the discussion last time, Chair. I think the view was that there were various task and finish pieces of work that were going to be taken away in terms of the development plan. So I suppose it's more getting an update on anybody who was tasked with anything and where we're at with it. I know Councillor Knight, you were looking at the SACRE leaflets with and seeking some additional support from Interfaith around that. And what I would say is that probably at the next meeting we ought to do a full update on which strands are progressing well, which bits of the development plan are completed and finished, and starting to think about new priorities to put into that development plan, perhaps linking them to the Ofsted subject report. Yeah, I think that seems reasonable. Anybody else got any comments on that at the moment? The one thing for me is we did say that we would have a sentence introducing SACRE members that could be added to the website. So I'm going to set us all an action. Can we write a sentence about ourselves? Just one. I'm not looking at anybody, but yeah, just one sentence. If we can write that down, that we're definitely going to do that for the next meeting as an action, and then we'll try and remember. Anything else?
A sentence.
So
introducing our
yes. So why are we a member of the SACRE committee? What's our background? So for me, for example, I'd probably write something about the fact that I am chair of the SACRE committee because I am exec member for children, young people and education. And my background, I'm a physics teacher. In fact, that's what I will write down. There you go. You've heard mine. And I think it's nice to sort of get a flavour of why different people are on the committee. Yes.
May I suggest you might need 2 sentences for it to make sense?
Grammar's always been secondary to me, but yes, no, that sounds reasonable. But no more than 2. Okay, then we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, item 5. And that is the Quality Kite Mark training for organisations. So, Maxine, did you have anything specific on this one?
No, I don't. Diane, I think, has got more information on the Quality Kite Mark.
Sorry, Diane, off you go.
No problem. I asked about this. I said that in previous work that I've done, that Kirklees SACRE had done a lot of work on this. So I spoke to a representative from Kirklees SACRE, and he pointed me straight back to RE Hubs. He said, I wouldn't worry about this. It's all on RE Hubs. So the idea is that there is training on there that you can point organisations, visitors to, and when they've done the training, that then gives them a Kite Mark from RE Hubs, which is accredited by RE Hubs, and they then have done the training that basically Kirklees used to do, similar training, to show that they are the type of visitor that we need in schools, that they've had the essential training that they need around dealing with children and working with teachers, and the messaging that you can use in schools.
And is that messaging just to be really clear, is that sort of around, we're not proselytizing, we're
Absolutely.
not promoting, we're
Absolutely.
just saying what's going on.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted clarification around that.
Yeah.
But that sounds like this RE Hubs is definitely solving a lot of the things that we've talked about. I think it's something that could be a good step in the right direction. Anybody got any questions about that? No? Happy? Good. Well, thank you very much, Dan, because that is really valuable, and I think it does help us move a little bit forward. One of the items on the development plan was school visits. And so what my intention is we will provide a written report at the next meeting on feedback on SACRE school visits. We've carried out 2 school visits so far. We've been to St Oswald's C of E Primary School. Sue, you were alongside myself and Councillor Knight for that one. And then we recently went to Fishergate Primary School, and Ben, you again accompanied myself and Councillor Knight to Fishergate. I took the executive decision, if I'm honest, not to write a written report, because that would have meant I'd have had to write it last week, and I was slightly busy last week. So we will provide something for our next meeting. But I don't know if anyone who was on one of those meetings has got any thoughts that they wanted to share right now. Yeah, go for it, Sue.
I had a conversation with the head at St Oswald's and the chair of governors, who were just wondering if there was going to be any sort of written feedback for the school. I just think any visitors into a school, it's really useful to have something. And I know there was talk about waiting until we'd sort of done it all, but will that report be, if it's talking about different schools, be something that will go back to those schools? Is that still?
Yeah, my intention is, now that essentially the Fishergate school visit got delayed because we're all very busy people. But yeah, my intention is that we'll write something, and then that would go back to each of the schools. At the time, I have basically sent an email saying thank you very much, thanks for your time, and you know, I personally thought they were really, really valuable visits. But yeah, that's certainly, we will put something together that we'll share with the schools. Yeah. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Councillor?
I just want to say, personally, I found both visits incredibly uplifting and rewarding. I think at a time of great religious turmoil around the world, it was actually quite reassuring to see that schools have got a grip on it and the children get it. I think I came away quite sort of pleased that not only were they learning well, but they were understanding how to put various things in practice, and that collaboration and understanding and being being kind to people who have different views. That whole thing came across very, very clearly, and I think we can be very proud of our city, because if that's a reflection of all our primary schools, then I think it seems to buck the trend a little bit from what you were saying in the report, is saying that isn't happening, because it was clear that the RE curriculum was important in both schools. The teachers took it very seriously and were quite passionate about it, and I can't wait to see the secondary schools and see what the next, because it's fine, but I don't want them to lose that at 11 and then get swallowed up in a different trajectory. But I would recommend anyone who hasn't been, for any reason, go, because it was really 2 wonderful visits, I think.
Yeah. Ben, did you have any thoughts?
Really, I was just very impressed, actually, and very much enjoyed seeing how engaged the kids were, and how I felt the curriculum was very much about letting them find their own answers and finding their own questions. They were very happy to argue and engage, which of course is a Fishergate trait.
Yeah, I think for me, what I sort of, I've just sort of made a few notes, is I thought that St Oswald's, the formalised curriculum was particularly good, and they could articulate that really well. And I almost felt like they decided to treat it as an opportunity to practice for a deep dive. You know, it was that sort of feeling. And we were very, very clear that it was in no way an inspection. We were just learning about what was going on in the school. About across both schools, incredibly engaged young people who could ask good questions. And we, in both schools, in both visits, we went and we saw a lesson. And it was a really quite a settling experience. It was the whole class engaged in a discussion in both settings. We saw the same thing, didn't we? It felt quite informal, which was quite nice. The children had an opportunity to question and learn. And if you remember when we talked to those older young people, that was something that they all said that they really liked. And, you know, it was interesting to see how that was what was being delivered at primary school. I think that, as we expected at St Oswald's, there was an obvious Christian focus. It's a C of E school. That was clear. At Fishergate School, which is a much more diverse school, even though it's literally just down the road, you felt that in the building. What we saw was just the real strength of ethos and how it's about, you know, what makes a good person, what makes a good friend, what were relationships about. And I think that came across. It came across in both schools, but I particularly like that in Fishergate, and potentially it was possibly easier to show in Fishergate School because it was quite a diverse community. So that was something I really liked. After what we've heard today about teachers maybe wanting a bit of support around how to look at other worldviews and non-religious worldviews, that did actually come up in one of the visits where I think it was Fishergate, I believe, where they were talking about the teacher wanted a little bit more support on how to teach non-religious worldviews, and I'd then received that support from the Maintained Schools group, the RE teachers. So that I thought was really quite useful. So yeah, we will put up a report together to look at that, but I think I'd agree with Councillor Knight. I think it was a really nice place to be in. I think our schools really shone on those mornings. And yeah, next step, we want to talk about going to a secondary school. Now, we've kind of focused on one bit of the city in that we've been to Fishergate and St Oswald's. So I'm potentially thinking maybe have a look at Fulford, because we're looking at the feeder schools that go to a secondary school. I don't know what people's thoughts are about that, if maybe we approach Fulford and see what they're up to. And then maybe think about another secondary school, and that could be something we did next year. We could do a couple of secondary visits. So
I was just going to say, really, that sounds like a really sensible idea, because if we're looking with a bit of a focus on the RE report that's saying that, you know, teaching is slightly different to what we've seen so far, if we've seen the two primaries, and then we can see in the feeder school that actually that is continuing and the children are continuing on that same trajectory, it gives us a much clearer idea about what's going on for our young children than being a bit more scattergun.
Yeah, I think my thoughts around Fulford are you get an answer to two questions. I think you've got a group of children where we sort of have seen a very brief snapshot of, admittedly, of what's going on in that primary school. But then if we see a continuation of good practice in Fulford at secondary school, then we've seen what a path looks like. But the second question is, well, that's one segment of our city, isn't it? So what's going on in another part of the city? So that's why I'm thinking potentially 2 secondaries, if possible, next year. Taco.
No, I should put my hand up for this. But I was also thinking about the fact that I teach at Joseph Rowntree, head of RE Joseph Rowntree. I'd be more than happy to have people come and visit there. Of course, it would be up to the head in the school if that would be acceptable. But what's interesting for us, of course, that we completely use the agreed syllabus. And I think it would be interesting for SACRE members to sort of see that syllabus at work, and you know, happy to let people go through the whole kind of curriculum that we've put together and the scheme of work that we've put together, sort of see how on a page that looks as like a lesson and kind of have a bit more of an interesting look that way. But then what might be interesting then is if we have another primary near us again that also uses the agreed syllabus quite closely, because there's a definite step from Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 3, and it would be interesting to for me as well actually to sort of see where we need to be at Key Stage 3 from looking at what they do in Key Stage 2. So that'll be again be a nice way to sort of build that together. So I think if you go from a church school, they don't necessarily use the agreed syllabus, and I think Fulford don't have to, their academy. So it's that kind of sense of seeing what the differences between the two would I think be really interesting.
Right, so we've raised it to 3 school visits now.
Sorry. If
I do quite a lot of school visits. It's the best bit. Diane, you had your hand up briefly, and I'll come to you.
I was just going to say that another question to ask the head of RE at the secondary school is, what do they think about the knowledge that the children have coming to them? Because of course they have children coming from many different primary schools, so they can give you a good idea about baseline knowledge when they come up to year 7.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's a good thought. Councillor Wilson.
I was just wondering whether if you did 2 secondary schools, thinking of workload and time and how busy everybody is the next academic year, and then the following academic year, you could do 2 feeder schools to Joseph Rowntree to then do the same as what you've done with Fishgate and St Oswald's, but backwards. That would give you quite a nice pattern to follow around the city to slowly build up a much broader picture without having to visit 3 schools in 1 year.
Actually,
just to say, the first primary school that we did was Ralph Butterfield, which is one of the feeders to Joseph Rowntree. So we've already got a written report about the visit to see Andy. So we could then choose another one of your feeders.
Okay, right. So the plan.
Sorry, can I just
try for Fulford? I mean, we
me?
don't have to accept him, but we can ask if we can go and do a similar thing at Fulford. Taco, are you happy to maybe make approaches at Joseph Rowntree?
Absolutely, no problem. I'll get onto that.
Brilliant. So if we aim to do, I think I agree, Councillor Wilson, let's do 2 next year, 2 secondaries, and then follow it in with primaries the following academic year. And if we find that actually we've done Fulford and we've done Joro by Christmas, there's no pressure on it, then we can put something in later on. Does that seem reasonable to everybody? Tremendous. Okay, Maxine, are you okay to approach Fulford?
Yeah, I'll contact the head.
Hello, can anybody hear me?
I can't say we're friendly. I think they know me by now. Tell them everybody else is friendly. Right, we'll move on. Andy?
Can you hear me now?
We can, yes, go for it.
Sorry, it was just to your earlier point. I hadn't realised I was waiting for a gap in the meeting. I hadn't realised you couldn't hear me. Just 2 points. The first one was in the primary network meeting. The visits that you had planned came up, and there was quite an an excited chatter, if you like, about what the content might be, and they were asking me how it went for me, and so I've talked about my experience. And there was a number of more experienced and more confident RE teachers who were sort of happy to sort of say, yep, you've got this, you know this, and that sort of thing. And it did get me to thinking that the visits, some of the visits we might be doing are some of the more experienced and more established RE curriculums, or the schools with more established RE curriculums. It may be interesting to find the one that's in more of a development phase where they're re-establishing it, or that's a new coordinator, and just some of that feedback then may be able to help them on their next steps and to build further. I know we talked about it not being an inspection or anything like that, but more of a friendly sort of visit just to see how things are. And I know that we have provided sort of letters, but it could be that it could double up as something a bit more useful for those teachers who quite fancy someone coming and having a look at things.
I think that's really, really helpful, Andy. Andy, am I all right to ask if when you're next in that space, you can ask any of the RE teachers if they'd like someone to come and visit. I mean, even if it wasn't lots of us, I'm always happy to go and visit primary schools, and I'd be happy to sort of do something about in the capacity as chair of SACRE. Does that sound reasonable?
Absolutely. Yep, I can share that. I'm leading that meeting on that discussion curriculum, so I'll add that to that discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody, anything else? Well, I just want to finish on that item by saying thank you very much to the people who took the time to come along on the visits. I think we had some good expertise with us at the time. I think it was really, really useful. And yes, another action is myself, Councillor Knight, Sue, Ben. I think the four of us can get together at some point. What I'm intending to do is I'll write a report and then you guys can pick it to pieces. Does that sound reasonable with everybody? Okay, let's do it that way then. Okay. Next item is feedback on the NASACRE Conference. Taco and Diane, I assume I'm coming to you guys on this.
Personally, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to go to that conference. It was very useful on all kinds of levels. The first part of the conference itself was a roundup of where we're at as a subject, and of course the Ofsted report was a big part of that, as was the National Content Standard. But also a third foot of that stool, if you like, is the toolkit that's been provided by various. It's basically the RE Council, but the RE Council has drawn together lots of collaborative groups of people to produce a toolkit using the National Content Standard to try and produce something at the level that we want as a subject going forward. So it's in line with national curriculum subjects as well, to try and level out the playing field as far as the standard is concerned for the subject, in light of what Ofsted have had to say about some of the issues. So the handbook that's been produced was dubbed seminal in terms of what it offers. So that's something else to think about. There was a lot to think about, certainly, in what they had to say. But they've provided 3 exemplar curricula written for different contexts. So there's one for a MAT context, there's one for a faith school context. So to try and reflect the different contexts of schools that are teaching RE. There was also something about some of the challenges that RE is facing, the idea of the bursary. Can we carry on with that next year? There's a bursary at the moment to try and recruit RE teachers, £10,000 this year. Hopefully it'll continue next year, but obviously there's some lobbying to do in that regard. Subject knowledge was mentioned, and the fact that the subject knowledge enhancement courses, the funding has been taken away for that. So hopefully lobbying again. And these are things that we can do. And that was very much the message, that SACRE can do this lobbying to try and get government to recognise how important the subject knowledge courses are. Culham St Gabriel's actually has already been mentioned. The Culham St Gabriel's website has already, I think it's 10 hours. I might be wrong on that. It might be 8, it might be 12 hours of training, CPD, that teachers can do for free. And I think a great job that we can do is to signpost teachers towards that. The documentation that came out following the conference is very thorough, and it's actually in our pack. And the links that are there take you to the Ofsted report, take you to the National Content Standard. So it's all in here if you want to look further. The presentations that were given are all in the links that are in our pack as well. So I can recommend you have a look at those. There was a session 2, which was more practical things that different people are doing around the country as regards how to sell RE, what the young people are doing in different projects up and down the country. And they were all very positive as well, weren't they? And then the third session was Lap Blaylock from RE Today, NATRE, on 35 ways a SACRE can be an activist SACRE. Which was excellent. 35. That's the document there. I sent it to Angela, I think, when and so again that you can see that. But some of the headlines from that: have a SACRE's day. Some SACREs have a termly newsletter. Partnerships with other SACREs. Have a teacher conference. Offer training, lobbying, activising. He said. Shared syllabi, which I thought was an interesting one as well. All ways of trying to work together and get best practice going. But then there were 2 workshops that we could choose, and I chose to go to the RE Council's National Content Standard workshops. I wanted to know more about that. So just a brief feedback, a bit more detail about that standard, just to let you know what it is and what it isn't. It's a standard for the content. It's not content. It exists within the context of the National Plan for RE. This is everybody collaborating in the RE community for this National Plan for RE. It aims to embed the standard into curricular planning in the various contexts. It draws on the RE Council's Religion and Worldviews in the Classroom project. It links to other relevant national publications. It outlines how a national content standard might be applied in different types of school. It doesn't seek to recommend or specify a set of content. It's setting the standard, not setting the content. Therefore, it's flexible. It talks about the purpose of study. It's looking for breadth and depth equivalent to other national curriculum subjects. Instead of content, it has 6 principles for selecting content. And it talks about there being collectively enough content to meet the aims of RE, which again feeds back to what Ofsted was saying, talk about there not being collectively enough RE for a coherent curriculum, coherent understanding in young people. There's a freedom to address the diversity in the local community. It's getting away from the silo mentality. Religion and worldviews allows for teaching in themes. It aims for conceptual understanding of, for example, things like worship or morality, rather than studying Islam or studying Christianity. It's about setting a standard from which all schools can write a curriculum. And the exemplars of content show the breadth, depth and ambition that's expected. So that was really useful. And then the second workshop I went to was how RE Hubs can provide support to SACREs. So this is why I kept singing about RE Hubs tonight. It was really very useful. In terms of the Kite Mark, events, training, lists of visitors, resources that are there, and many other things as well, which I hope to be able to show you at some point. Over to you.
And I haven't got any notes, but that was incredibly comprehensive. Thank you. Yeah, I also thought it was a fantastic day. One of the big messages that I got from it was that collaboration, working with our own SACRE, but then I think it's like we said, the carrot reward, sort of like, you know, getting the challenge, wasn't it? So the idea of like working with schools, like giving them things, giving them the stuff that they can use and training and things like that, and then challenging them with something like, would it be, at the moment, my year 7s are doing the Spirit and Arts competition, which is run through, I think, RE today, those kind of groups as well. And it's a competition for the students. There's 6 topics, but it's the kind of thing, again, that we could run through SACRE Interfaith. I've done previous kind of competitions, art competitions as well. And it's working together with local schools, it's working with primaries and secondaries. And those are the sort of things that we could facilitate. And then sort of like give them little things that get people to meet, you know, CPD, and then challenge them with something so they kind of stay engaged with what we're doing. Interesting part as well is sort of later on in the day we had there was a bit of content about sort of the future of RE and the importance of RE. So we had, I think there was a really nice speech from Rachel D'Souza talking about sort of the importance of RE and having taught RE herself, and sort of like where that's sort of going and on governmental levels, which was really kind of positive, I thought. And there was also the current thing that's starting, which is an RE ready for work, and sort of trying to push a little bit as to where RE can kind of help people into next steps and into work, and where the knowledge and the empathy and things that they learn and the analysis that students learn in RE is actually really useful for the working world. Again, there's loads of links and things that they sort of saw there. I also attended another seminar which was about SMSC, whole school SMSC, and you know how very often SMSC falls to the head of RE, but they kind of go together really, really quite nice. And it was just nice to sort of see how that should look on a whole school level, and that was something I could then feed back to the school as well, which I thought was quite good. But yeah, it was really comprehensively put together, so thank you very much. But yeah, really fantastic day. And of course, the last bit they talked about was NASACRE changing to a charity, which I think everybody had an email about, or if there was any objections to that. And it was just that seemed to completely make sense. And there was a new CEO appointed, as it were, at the meeting as well. So we had a really nice talk about finance at the end of it, which had to happen. But I think one of the things is to be part of NASACRE, they are going to put their membership fees up slightly, because I think at the moment with the fees that they charge and the fact that it's got to be a charity and they've got to employ certain people, they were falling short of the kind of money that they needed. But it was just kind of a bit at the end. So I think they're going to put together another AGM soon to sort of sign that off, really. Yeah. But it was brilliant. Really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I forget, Diane, did you have notes written down and things, and both of you? I wonder if you could share them with the group, and also the helpful pamphlet that you showed off there, Taco. If there's a digital copy of that anywhere, excellent. Can that come round? Because I think potentially for the next meeting, we've talked a lot about having like a teacher conference or something. I think it'd be worth having a look at the feedback that you've got and the notes and that document and stuff like that. And then the next meeting, we can actually discuss, right, is there anything from this list of 35 things, for example, that we could do simply, that we are doing already, and that we think, you know what, this would be worthwhile doing. And just again, so while I've got the floor, RE training in York, who does it for new teachers and how many have we got? So, you know, Sue, you got your hand up.
So the diocese offers a lot of training on the Christian side of things, and that they do sort of cover some more general things about RE, but the gap is about that really in-depth knowledge that teachers need in the different faiths. And every now and again, something will sort of come into the school's inbox offering something, but it's really piecemeal. And if you go looking for it, it's really hard to find.
So that's obviously for sort of C of E background, but like, you know, I went to York University and studied physics as a PGCE. Who's delivering the PGCEs in RE at the moment? Diane, is it you?
Yeah, I am.
Brilliant. Well, that was easy, wasn't it?
The University has one as well, but certainly York St John, that's take on it.
No, and there was, and the reason I said is there anything delivered through like Pathfinder? Is that
in terms of obviously they have Pathfinder have got their initial teacher training offer. I was scanning the wall when I was up there on Friday. I'm not sure whether they've got anybody studying RE at the moment.
And Diane, how many students?
Well, on the primary side, I can't give you specific numbers because I'm not entirely sure, but it's upwards of 100 on primary school teachers. Secondary, I had 2 this year. A lot of them tend to go to Leeds Trinity because they do it in a different way. But they should come to us because it's much better.
We have no specifics and no favourites.
Sorry.
Any way, shape or form. But York's always better. So, because the only reason I think about it, in terms of, you know, some sort of teacher conference and things like that, I think potentially trying to involve the teachers in training sort of bolsters our numbers slightly if we were going to do something. But anyway, that's enough questions from me. Does anybody else have any questions of Dan or Taco? Councillor Knight.
Thank you, Chair. Just, it's more of an observation really and thoughts. It occurred to me when you said about taking what you learn from RE into the workplace out into the broader world. It did occur to me, to what extent do we or can we influence how many pupils take it up at GCSE and A level? as a subject, because it strikes me as that, is there anything we could even look at there? Because I think that would be quite interesting to see what the conversion rate is from learning, because if they have a good experience in the subject, my experience as a parent is if they enjoy the subject and they like the teacher, that tends to influence their choice of subject. So it'd be interesting to know.
Obviously, one of the things that influences the take up in the secondary schools is how it's placed in the option blocks. Some of our schools are faith schools, and so they do have it as a compulsory option. But yeah, and also the amount of curriculum time that's available within those option blocks as well can influence it. One of the things that in the autumn, when we do the monitoring standards review, I'll be bringing the numbers that have studied at GCSE and A level and doing a comparative for you of how did that look at the same time last year. We still maintain quite high take up in York for RE, both at GCSE and A level, but it has been just starting to slip over time.
And I think on that, it'll be interesting to see what happens with curriculum nationally, because I know the new government it's in the manifesto to look at increasing opportunity for art, for PE, for technical subjects. I'm not specific on what's happened with RE, but if you change what happens with those subjects, it has an impact on everything, because you've got 25 periods to work out what you're doing.
One of the issues obviously was that RE suffered when it was left out of the EBAC. And that actually made it difficult, because obviously it isn't one of the prescribed humanities, and history and geography benefited from that. So there are some things about the way that the national qualifications framework is structured which have actually caused a few problems for RE.
Anybody got any other questions about that item? Okay, well, thank you. Go on then.
So do other schools in secondary schools in York require children to do at least a half GCSE in RE? Because I know that's Fulford's around. I assume that was citywide, but it is not.
Yeah, I mean, most of the schools have got some qualification route in RE, either a half GCSE or a full GCSE. They're all their curriculums maps are structured slightly differently. The faith schools tend to put you through the full GCSE as part of their curriculum offer. But it does vary, doesn't it, Taco? And I know your school had to revisit the amount of time it was giving to RE.
So yeah, thank you. It was it's kind of been quite a long journey, because we were changing yet again. So when I first took over in the post, we had 1 hour per fortnight for RE at Key Stage 3, and we had a compulsory full GCSE in Year 9 and Year 10 on then 2 hours per fortnight, which is impossible. So there were a lot of conversations, and then we went to the short course, because that is designed to be taught on 2 hours per fortnight. But again, it was still the idea of sitting in Year 9 and Year 10, and then we had nothing in Year 11, and some of the extra curriculum time then we brought over to other subjects, the English and maths, because they need more time. And so then we went in Year 11, which then meant that our uptake in sixth form was lacking, because of course we weren't in their periphery. They didn't think about our subject. So now again, we're in the middle of changing that again, because I sort of argued that it needs to be in Year 10 and 11, because they're sitting a GCSE which is designed, kind of the skills in analysis and even the empathy skills for Year 9 versus Year 11 is very, very different. So now we're changing it to 7, 8 and 9 are going to get 2 hours per fortnight, which they changed quite recently. So we've got plenty of time there. And then changing to an option for Year 10 and 11, where of course we'll get the full course, we'll get the full 5 hours that we need. The next question that would be, and I think is the problem with the EBAC, is which option block will we be in? And I think we're just going to be put in with all the other options, and you've got history and geography, and then we'll be in there somewhere with everything else, and we've got quite a lot of options. So it'll be interesting to see where we kind of fall. But asking some of the Year 8s, They're quite relieved that I have to do the GCSE in year 9, but quite a lot of them were saying that they would actually look forward to doing the full GCSE in year 10 and 11. And having changed that over the last few years, again, our A-level uptake has really improved as well. I think when I first started, we had 7 or 8, and then starting in September, we've got sort of 20 on the books. So we're trying to see, but we're doing pure philosophy as well as the religious studies. So it's constantly changing. We're revisiting it all the time. But I know that Huntington, I always say next door to us, it pretty much is. They run a very similar Audible. They have 2 hours in year 7, 8, and 9, and then it's an option. And then what we will do, same as them, is then have 1 hour in year 10 and 11, alongside something like SMSC, where we deliver RS still to year 10 and year 11, but then we'll have a separate exam class. And I think they run that model at the moment. So we're sort of trying to mirror that a little bit.
Yeah, there's now more political in schools than option blocks and hours taught. That's why I'm very thankful I'm a science teacher. Okay, let's move on to the RE Hubs newsletter, which the only thing I will say about the RE Hubs newsletter is it's possibly one of the worst fonts in the world. I mean, that's just dreadful, quite frankly. No, but it's obviously there for folks to read, and I hope you have read it. Maxine, do you want to speak to?
Yeah, these both of the next 2 items really are just for your interest. You know, you've got the RE Hubs newsletter and the NASACRE newsletter, both of which are packed full of rich information. I will feed back to Olivia about the fonts and then see if she can take that on board for the RE Hubs newsletter. But as has been highlighted throughout the meeting, you know, there's lots of supporting information out there for SACREs. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There is a lot that we can link into and begin to more effectively signpost. Yeah.
I was just going to suggest that this newsletter sent to schools, a lot that schools need to know, which would mean we wouldn't have to do a term newsletter because it's all in there.
Okay, can I leave that with Councillor Knight then? Because I know you were looking at newsletters, so then potentially we can look at how we either combine the two or find that's perfectly acceptable and we don't need to do anything. That seems reasonable. Anybody got any questions about item 8, that RE Hubs newsletter? Okay, has anybody got any questions about the NASACRE updates, item 9? Thank you. They were more just for information. So we'll move on then to item 10, correspondence on complaints and determinations.
Yeah, we've received no complaints or determinations since the previous meeting, so that's dealt with nice and quickly.
It's always a good sign. Okay, we'll move on to any other business.
I've just got one.
Oh, everyone's got some, right? Okay, I'm going to start with Councillor Wilson.
I've got 2. The first one is whether we are open to new members joining us, and how that would go about, because I've had a teacher contact me to say they'd really like to be more involved. So that would be under and is it group C for the teacher group? Yeah. So I didn't know whether we had to go through the same process we did when we invited Diane to join us, and it would be a primary school teacher.
I mean, I don't have any problems with inviting a new member along. In terms of our constitution, it's very much we can, there's no upper limit. And as you can see from Group C at the moment, we've got 3 people, 3 wonderful people. Andy, you still with us?
I am, sorry, I had to scramble.
It's all right, just checking. So Taco, Andy and Diane, have you got any problems? Because it'd be your team. Excellent.
No problem.
Fantastic. Are we happy for them to be invited to the next meeting? And my view on this is maybe give them a meeting, and then at the following meeting, if they turn up a second time, then we formally invite them. Does that sound reasonable? Then yeah, they get an opportunity to see what we're doing, see if it's what they're and see how that works. Does that sound reasonable? Your second item.
I will reply. My second item was the youth.
Sorry, can I just start? Ralph Butterworth is a community or?
Ralph Butterfield's
Butterfield.
community.
So I was just thinking in terms of spread, it would be good to have somebody who was from primary, a faith
Oh,
primary.
yeah. What primary?
Not a faith primary school.
Not a faith primary. What primary school is it?
From Fishergate.
It is
Just was so impressed with the school visit
Oh,
that said I would really like to be more involved. So I said I would ask.
okay. Sounds good.
It's not a reason to exclude.
No.
It might be a reason to say we should perhaps also have in mind.
Yeah.
Question. We might need a bigger room at some point.
Obviously, there is the option as well with somebody from a faith school to join one of the other
The other teams.
the other groups, particularly if it's the Church of England school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Wilson.
And then the second one is I have started looking at youth SACREs, and in some places they're called a youth voice for SACRE that are set up in other parts of the country, which has been quite interesting looking at how different people have done it. And the part of our remit where we've been inviting young people to talk to us quite often in other SACREs, that is the youth SACRE reporting or the youth voiced for SACRE reporting back. So it was to find out if there was interest in me taking that further. I did wonder, so one of the ways that often youth SACREs are started is by either coming along to one of the teaching groups, or by having an event where you invite people along. And I did wonder whether Interfaith Week might be a nice week to open up the discussion about youth SACRE in York. As it's November, it's not too close, but it felt like it would fit quite well with an activity to do. So I'm happy to carry on that vein if people agree.
Sounds absolutely fine to me. Does anyone disagree with that? Yeah, I
And
mean,
just to say, if anybody's got ideas of where would be a good place to start, feel free to get in touch.
I mean, we could start with the young people who showed an interest previously and came along to talk to us. I think that'd be a lovely place to start, but that's not to exclude anybody. I think if you email me, Councillor Wilson, I think I've got the details, the contact details of the various young people that we talked to previously. At our next meeting in October, do you think you'll be in a position to update us on what you could do, and maybe you could work with Penny in the interim about something for Interfaith Week?
And then my only other question on that is some are just secondary, so like year 10 and 11 who are invited, and some have representatives from year 5 and above, and I wondered what other members' thoughts were on keeping it broad or.
I mean, I suppose the question that I have is how we facilitate this, because I'm happy to support young people and that some sort of meeting or some sort of discussion, however we want. But I'm also very, very aware that our officers are incredibly stretched, and what I don't want it to become is a massive burden. In terms of age groups, I don't see that as a barrier. It's more the number of young people. As long as they were all happy to be in one space together, I think that's fine. Does that sound reasonable to everybody? Yeah, I wouldn't want more than, 10 people.
I will, for our next meeting, I'll look a bit more about the logistics, how it's organised, as well as the general picture.
I'm just concerned about, because I know that we are incredibly stretched as it is, and I keep asking people to do stuff. Actually, can help with that. So can you link in with Sarah about that? Would be great. Thank you. Okay. Is that everything? Penny?
Forgot. It's kind of a related but an unrelated question. We had a problem at a school In fact, one of those young people that came to that meeting, Angelina, had a problem with a history teacher. It wasn't an RE lesson, it was a history lesson in which he was teaching about the subject of migration, and our faith was formed part of that topic. So not directly RE, but the way that he taught about our faith wasn't very good, because he didn't understand. He didn't have that subject knowledge of our faith, which we addressed with information, and the parents went in and, you know, we enlightened him as to, well, this isn't really kind of what we believe. And, you know, it came from a textbook, and we had long conversations, and the head was copied in, and that was fine. And, but I just thought, has that ever come up? We talk about RE, but we don't talk about, are our faiths being discussed in other subjects in which perhaps we're not aware and should be aware, and do we need to help them? We talk about helping RE, obviously, teachers, but how should we, I don't know, is there something that we should be facilitating with other subject teachers? I don't, obviously not maths or physics, but, you know, in history, it came up in the history. She was doing GCSE history.
Yes,
so,
it
so
is part of the GCSE history curriculum.
Okay.
There is a particular bit of the syllabus where they are learning about the American West, and the Mormon faith is a topic within that. Yeah, but obviously it's taught from the point of view of well, it should be taught from the point of view that they are a group of people who migrated into the West. But yeah,
but it was very much taught. He taught it about belief, about our beliefs and custom and practice, not just the subject. It was about migration.
Yeah,
and you know, there was a trek west. There was migration. You know, there was, as they settled in Salt Lake. But I didn't know if that had come up before. If it's, you know, but we resolved the issue, we hope. But
I think it's an interesting one. I mean, from personal experience, you said as a physics teacher, these things won't come up. Well, I teach evolution. I teach the Big Bang. I have to admit, I have had deeply religious young people who've found what I teach very, very difficult. And my view is, of course, well, what I'm teaching is theory based on fact, theory based on evidence, and that's an evidence-based view. And actually, if we go right back to what we talked about at the start, where we've mentioned God and the Big Bang, for example, that is a conversation about fact, theory, and belief, and the difference between those. And I suspect that in situations like that, that will be dealt with by a school's complaints policy, and there's nothing to say that if the school found that difficult and weren't sure what is right and what is wrong, there's nothing wrong to say in a secondary school, they'd probably get in touch with the RE department and see if there was anything. And then the RE department would probably get in touch with us if they felt that necessary. I think that would probably be the way I'd see it working. Taco?
I think that the question really is, it's whether the comments were from a personal point of view about the religion rather than actually the facts about the history of it. And I think that's the issue. I think as a teacher, you've always got to be very careful, especially as an RE teacher, of talking about that unbiased sort of stance. And whatever religion you're teaching, when I'm teaching, often at the end of the lesson, the kids come up to me and sort of say, "So are you part of that faith then?" It's like, well, no, I'm teaching you about it. I'm not, you know. And but then it's that kind of thing of, because I've done it in an unbiased way, and I've made them think about the faith. I've made them think about those issues, that there's not been any criticism, and I think that's what it sounds like to me. Like the teacher did not have that. I mean, I don't know the whole background of it, but did not go with that kind of unbiased stance and maybe put some of their own personal views into it, which I think is then when you start to cross the line. Because even something like politics, for example, in the last few weeks, we've been in form time, we've been talking about politics, and as a teacher, you have to be very careful not to give any kind of bias towards anything, and you have to give everybody that platform. So I think that's more the issues. I think it's just that little bit of misstep from the teacher. And I think you did the right thing in addressing that, to be fair.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, the history curriculum will refer to different faith movements, because, you know, that it is riven through with questions about the history of faith within the history curriculum, right through from, you know, sort of primary school through to A level. So it's more about the teachers dealing with that in a way which is within the discipline of the subjects, not that they're offering particular views, personal views about the faith.
Just very quickly, like you would expect if you were teaching the Reformation or the Great Schism, that somebody would suddenly go, well, actually the Catholics were better than Protestants. You know, you wouldn't expect that kind of view into it. So I don't see why that would have been a place there. So well done for addressing it.
And I think that fundamentally that should be covered through teachers' standards, really, you know, in terms of what we're meant to, you know, what teachers are meant to do and what they're not meant to do. Yeah, it is a challenge in lots of subject areas, because, you know, at the end of the day, teaching is dealing with people, and people are complicated and have many beliefs about all sorts of different things. So yeah, it can be a challenge. I think that was the right way to handle that one. Anybody got any other ALBs?
One of the documents which we have as a SACRE is a guidance document about collective worship. That was actually last looked at in 2017. So what I'm proposing for the October meeting is it's perhaps an opportunity to refresh our understanding of that document. And I noted that the NASACRE Conference also looked at what constitutes good and effective guidance around collective worship, and it's perhaps just one of those documents that we might want to return to. We might be perfectly happy with it, or we might want to refresh it.
That sounds good to me. Can that be added to the papers for the meeting, so we can read it in advance, and then we've got a good chance to discuss it?
Thanks.
Sorry.
Yes, Ben.
Yeah, it sounds very sensible. The issue, of course, is that I don't think anybody follows the guidance on collective worship. If you look at it, you revise it, are we putting ourselves in the position where maybe then we might feel the need to ask whether or not anyone's inspecting it or enforcing it?
Obviously, it's one of the legal requirements that it's actually there. I do appreciate, you know, sort of that once we've got a statement, but it would also give guidance as well, perhaps to when we are doing school visits. I know certainly when we did the visit to Ralph Butterfield, it was one of the things that we did ask about. And also it's very much, it is a guidance document, so it provides people with a framework. If we do get complaints or to SACRE, the ones that we've had historically have been about collective worship, and you know, sort of the people that are being used to support it in schools. Certainly, the last time we had a major complaint, it did link to that, and also you know, schools do have to take decisions about determinations where they're being asked to allow people to withdraw from it as well. So it's just one of those things that it's worth having an up-to-date version of it, and just being, you know, sort of assured that what SACRE has is still within the spirit of NASACRE guidance.
I mean, I think I understand your skepticism, Ben. What I would say is, if we take a look at it and agree it as it is, or update it, or whatever we choose to do, it gives us an opportunity to send that out to schools and say, just to remind them that these are the principles. Do you want to make a point?
I think it would be useful if the new government would abolish it quickly.
Okay, we won't.
I put that on some of the members around the table.
Yes, you can send that to me in a separate email. It talks about teachers being political. Of course, I am completely apolitical when I'm in school. Okie dokie. I had one more AOB. I think we had more AOBs than anything else. Mark Jones, who's involved in York Buddhism Centre. Now, I don't know who Mark Jones is, but he got in touch to say that he was thinking.
Yes. Mark Jones did a visit to Andy Todd's school and raised the question of SACRE membership. And Mark's teaches at York Buddhism Centre and previously gave a talk to SACRE on Buddhism a few meetings ago.
My understanding is that he was invited originally to join, or at least it was spoken about by a member of SACRE, not myself. And then he'd heard nothing since. So whilst he was doing a talk about Buddhism at Ralph Butterfield, he raised the question, and I said I wasn't certain, and I'd pass that on.
That's correct, Andy. I think it was the former chair, Councillor Waller, who had actually mentioned it to Mark at one of his last meetings, because it was a meeting in July, wasn't it, in the school? Yeah, it's a while ago. Yeah,
it's before my time in the chair, certainly. Hence, I didn't know who he was. Does anybody know Mark? Yeah, that sounds. Hello, Andy.
Sorry, I was just going to say, in the context of we sought out the York Buddhist Centre to have a Buddhist come and speak with the pupils as a local representative of the faith, if you like, or the belief. And in that, to that extent, we've had him visit a couple of times, and we've had some communication, and obviously he's come to SACRE.
Well, in my mind, I'm happy to extend an invite on the same vein as we invite the primary school teacher, Councillor Wilson, has been speaking to. Invite them along to a meeting if they find it useful, interesting, engaging. They think they can add something to it. Formally adopt at the following meeting, unless anyone's got any objections.
So that would be membership of Group A.
Yeah. And there's no upper limit on that group either. And it would add to Group A because it would be a new belief system, and we've got to catch them all. So that's what we're aiming for. It might take us a while. Okay. Anybody else for any other AOB? Calm down, Ben. Right, in that case, I draw the meeting to a close. Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you all. Thank you.